The House votes to extend expired Obamacare tax credits. Lawmakers write HHS regarding recent changes to CDC childhood vaccine recommendations. And Congress advances the next round of appropriations bills ahead of a looming government funding deadline. For the week of January 12th, 2026, from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., this is Health on the Hill, brought to you by Heart Health Strategies. I'm Matt Duckworth.
As chairman of the Energy and Water Development Subcommittee, I worked hard to ensure this bill includes many House Republican priorities. The bill provides a total of $58 billion to advance our national security.
Kicking off this week's episode with news from Capitol Hill, where the House of Representatives passed a minibus appropriations package last week containing fiscal year 2026 Interior Environment, Commerce, Justice, Science, and Energy Water funding bills. The legislation would reduce funding for the National Science Foundation by 3.4%, far less than the 55% cut proposed by the president's budget. The bill also includes language blocking the imposition of a 15% cap on indirect cost reimbursement for the federal science research agencies funded by the minibus, including the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NASA, and the Office of Science at the Department of Energy. The Senate intends to bring the package to the floor early this week. House appropriators worked through the weekend to finalize the next government funding package covering state foreign operations, homeland security, and financial services. The Labor, Health, and Human Services spending bill is expected to be among the final appropriations measures to move and be packaged with funding for defense and transportation, housing, and urban development. Labor, Health, and Human Services Subcommittee Chair Robert Aderholt, a Republican from Alabama, has said that several unresolved issues related to his panel's spending bill remain. Lawmakers face a January 30th deadline to address health extenders, avert another government shutdown, and fund most federal agencies for fiscal year 2026.
Speaker, I rise today to call up a bipartisan motion to discharge legislation to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to make sure that tens of millions of everyday Americans do not experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles that will prevent them from being able to go see a doctor when they need one.
The House of Representatives voted last week to extend the Enhanced Affordable Care Act advanced premium tax credits for another 3 years. 17 Republicans joined Democrats in support of a clean extension of the enhanced tax credits, which expired at the end of 2025. Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that out-of-pocket Affordable Care Act premiums have more than doubled on average with the expiration of the subsidies. The Congressional Budget Office has projected that a 3-year extension of the subsidies would cost $80.6 billion over the next decade. While the Senate didn't have enough support to pass the same provision in December, the House-passed bill could serve as a vehicle for compromise legislation to address rising health insurance premiums. Bipartisan talks led by Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine, and Bernie Moreno, a Republican from Ohio, alongside roughly a dozen other senators, are taking place. The negotiators are considering several policy modifications, including a shorter 2-year extension, an across-the-board minimum $5 premium, a 700% federal poverty line income cap on eligibility, the extension of open enrollment until March 1st, and funding for cost-sharing reduction payments. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has suggested that any bipartisan deal must also include a bridge to the expansion of tax-advantaged health savings accounts, income limits, and abortion restrictions. Reports indicate that the negotiators are close to reaching a deal, and that legislative text could be released as early as this week. Americans currently have until January 15th to enroll in Marketplace health plans for the remainder of 2026. On Tuesday, the Senate confirmed Sara Carter to lead the Office of National Drug Control Policy, or ONDCP, in a 52-48 vote. Carter is a podcast host and former Fox News contributor who's reported on drug trafficking and cartels. While she focused on the issue of the illicit drug supply during her confirmation process, in her role as ONDCP director, Carter will also be responsible for overseeing federal policy and funding related to substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery.
And my fellow Americans, we meet tonight at a moment of unlimited potential. As we begin a new Congress, I stand here ready to work with you to achieve historic breakthroughs for all Americans.
That, of course, was the voice of President Donald Trump, who plans to deliver his first State of the Union address of his second term on February 24th. The president's speech to lawmakers last March was considered a joint address to Congress. This year's State of the Union will provide President Trump the opportunity to discuss his legislative priorities for the coming year.
Well, first of all, Matt, you asked the right person because I'm the first and only pediatrician in Congress. And, I'm half surprised. I knew that RFK Jr. was going to start messing with the childhood vaccine schedule. What is particularly outrageous about this one is that he handpicked an advisory committee on immunization practices. The majority of the people on that panel that he handpicked have a long history of anti-vaccine activism, and he even did a run around them and independently declared that they were going to make pretty radical changes. That
was Representative Kim Schrier, a Democratic pediatrician from Washington State, who led a letter last week, signed by 150 other lawmakers, urging the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to restore the U.S. childhood immunization schedule. The letter follows a recent announcement that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is reducing the number of vaccines routinely recommended for all children from 17 vaccines to 11. The letter reads, quote, "Your agency's decision to overhaul decades of evidence-based science is arbitrary and driven by ideology. This announcement completely bypasses the recommendations made by the previously esteemed Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, a panel that you have replaced with your own hand-picked members, most of whom have long track records of anti-vaccine activism," unquote. The letter goes on to say, "We demand you reinstate the previous childhood immunization schedule, restore sanctity to the ACIP, and protect the health and well-being of children," unquote.
Thank you to the gentleman from Arkansas for his hard work for a long time on this work in creating a bipartisan bill that's intended to succeed. The area I represent in far northern California
Representative Doug LaMalfa, a Republican from California, passed away at the age of 65 on January 6th during emergency surgery. Congressman LaMalfa, who's a former state legislator, was serving in his 7th term in Congress at the time of his passing. He was a member of the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. LaMalfa's sudden death further lessens the GOP's majority in the House of Representatives. With the resignation of Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican from Georgia, which took effect on January 6th, Republicans now hold just 218 seats in the chamber, affording the party only 2 defections on any party line vote, with all members present.
Thank you very much, Madam Leader, and Chairman Becerra, thank you. Jim Clyburn, our Assistant Leader. First, let me say, the Democratic caucus is almost unanimous on the belief that the Affordable Care Act is good for our country, good for our people, that it will make affordable, quality health care available to all Americans.
Final news today where Representative Steny Hoyer, a Democrat from Maryland, has announced his plans to retire from Congress after more than 4 decades in the House of Representatives. Representative Hoyer was first elected to Congress in 1981. He He served as the House Majority Leader from 2007 to 2011, and again from 2019 until 2023. Since stepping down from his leadership post in 2022, Hoyer has served as a senior member on the House Appropriations Committee.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the organizational meeting for the 119th Congress.
And I welcome everyone to the first Help Committee meeting of the 119th Congress.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the first meeting of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce of the 119th Congress.
The Finance Committee will continue its long tradition of addressing these matters in a manner that invites bipartisanship. And
we end each week's episode with the Call to Order, where we lightning round congressional meetings and hearings in the near future that you need to know about. First, on Tuesday, January 13th at 2:15 p.m., the House Veterans Affairs Subcommittee on Health holds a legislative hearing, including the discussion draft of the Data-Driven Suicide Prevention Act and the Veterans with ALS Reporting Act. Second, on Wednesday, January 14th at 10 a.m., the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, or HELP Committee, hosts a hearing titled Protecting Women, Exposing the Dangers of Chemical Abortion Drugs. Third, on Wednesday, January 14th at 10 a.m., the House Science, Space, and Technology Subcommittee on Research and Technology convenes the hearing Advancing America's AI Action Plan. Fourth, on Wednesday, January 14th at 10:15 a.m., the House Committee on Education and the Workforce gavels in a hearing titled Building an AI-Ready America. Fifth, on Thursday, January 15th at 10 a.m., the Senate Help Committee convenes an executive session to consider the Women in Lung Cancer Research and Preventive Services Act, Tyler's Law, the Rural Hospital Cybersecurity Enhancement Act, and the Protect Infant Formula from Contamination Act. And last, on Thursday, January 22nd, the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Health and House Committee on Ways and Means hold hearings featuring health insurance company executives. The time of these hearings have yet to be determined. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of Health on the Hill, brought to you by Heart Health Strategies. For more information on this week's healthcare happenings in the administration and on Capitol Hill, you can visit our website at hhs.com and click on the news section at the top of the page. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Did we miss a story you wanted to hear this week? If so, email me at mduckworth@hhs.com, and we may include it in our next episode. Have a great week, and stay healthy.